I'm not sure I've ever seen such a loaded division in my life. So we're going to talk more about that and more about the Raiders. In fact, we are joined right now by running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, a two-time Super Bowl champ, 631 yards from scrimmage, 3 touchdowns with New England last season. He signed with Las Vegas earlier this month. He was undrafted way back in 2012 out of Ole Miss. He is an ambassador for the American Association for Cancer Research, 5K on April 9th. We will get into all these things. Brandon Bolden is my guest. Brandon, great to have you on. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Joe?
I'm great. I am great. It's good to have you on. So you and your family have a deep history with the Raiders that I'm going to get into in a second. But how does it feel right now to be a Raider, and what's it been like to make the transition from the Pats to the Raiders?
I can only answer that halfway. Really haven't been in the building to get kind of acclimated to everything and everybody. When I did go to sign my contract, though, it was great meeting the entire staff. And, you know, I'm really excited about the opportunity. This is a different scenery for me, being in New England for 9 years, and I'm excited to see what's next.
Brandon Bolden is my guest. So on the surface, it would make sense that you'd be a Raider since you and Josh McDaniels have history. You've worked together in the past, but it's also bigger than that. Your grandfather, Frank Pitts, played for the Raiders back in the 70s. When the opportunity then came up for you to be a Raider, what kind of emotions did you and your entire family feel?
I was completely floored when the opportunity came. I wasn't expecting that at all. And then just the fact that my grandfather played there, and then I get a chance to not only go play and wear the same uniform that he wore, it was great because last season I changed my number from 38 to 25 to honor my grandfather. And then here we are a year later, and now I'm going to be wearing the same colors as he did when he played.
That's awesome. Brandon Bolden is joining us. Then you've got Josh McDaniels. This is what he said of you last year. Quote, "He is one of my favorite guys that I've had a chance to coach because you talk about unselfish teammates that is always prepared and ready to go. That defines Brandon." End of quote. That's really high praise. So what's it mean to you to reconnect with him in Vegas? And then what do you expect from him as a head coach?
It means a lot for me to reconnect with him in Vegas. To me, on a personal level, means he trusts me as a player, he trusts me as a person, and he's going to give me the opportunity to help this team out in any way possible. And Josh knows that. Josh knows that without any practice or any thought or any idea, you ask me to go do something for any of the guys, and that I'm in the front. So this is going to be great. I expect him to be Josh. In New England, we spent a lot of time together, so we got to know each other and everything else. But as him as a head coach, I've only heard stories, and I saw when he coached Denver last time he was a head coach, and talked to Tebow and stuff like that. But as far as that, I expect Josh to be Josh, and that's just one of the hardest working coaches there, the last guy out of the building, and very close to being a perfectionist. So I'm expecting Josh to be Josh and do a lot of Josh things.
I like that. Personally, I actually love the hire. I thought it was a great hire by them. Let me ask you this. I hear what you say when you say I haven't spent a lot of time in the facility yet, and I'm going to find out what it's going to be like. What do you think, if you had to guess or project, do you think it's going to be kind of an extension of the Patriot way, or do you think that he'll come in and there will now be a Raider way and it will be different?
I think it'll be a Raider way and it'll be different. Of course, it's coming from the same tree as everyone else. But like I said, I expect Josh to be Josh and how Josh wants to run things. So I don't expect a Patriot way, a cookie-cutter Patriot way. I expect Josh to go in and figure out his own way and make this team its own identity.
Brandon Bolden is joining us. All right, so you're a part of a series of moves. I mentioned at the top when you first came on, Brandon, that the AFC West is wild now. I mean, it is wild. It is loaded, and the Raiders have been really active. When you look at the moves they've made, they also made a deal for Devontae Adams, of course. They signed Chandler Jones. You've been a part of some really special teams in the past. When you look at the talent on this roster, top to bottom, what kind of thoughts do you have?
I don't have any thoughts right now. It's like I said, I'm not in the building, haven't been around to be with the guys and digest the playbook and see how we all mesh together. I mean, on paper, it looks exciting, but we haven't done much of anything yet. We haven't had a practice together. We haven't played a game together, so it's hard for me to say,
All right, I get that. So I mentioned off the top, too, that you were undrafted back in 2012 out of Ole Miss. You're starting your second decade in the NFL, and you're coming off your best year of your entire career. How would you explain that level of durability and longevity?
Playing smart, learning from the vets before me, how they took care of their bodies, and then hearing the stories of how they wish they could have done things when they were younger. And that's kind of the things that I adapted into my routine. And here we are, like you said, going on the second decade. It's been exciting, but I will credit to all my teammates, especially the younger guys like last year with Damian Harris and Ramondre and J.J. Taylor. Those young guys kept me going and pushed me to want to be better, and that was a result of last season.
Brandon, speaking of the young guys, there's a story from last year that you were rocking a T-shirt to the facility that referenced In Living Color, and a number of these young guys had no idea what that was about. Like, what was that moment like for you?
That was last year was very funny. You know, in 2020 I opted out, so this was my first year, back with the team, and I just wore a couple of shirts, and it was a Home of the Clown shirt, and I never forget. JJ had asked me, he's like, "Bro, you just like clowns or something like that?" And I was like, "No, you didn't." And then I turned to Damian and was like, you know who this is? And Damian had no clue. Ramondre had no clue. So then I started just going to the kickers, and I went to the tight ends. And most of them had no idea what was going on. And that's when the first time I felt like, gosh, I'm old. And then guys like Damian called me Pappy because I'm so old, and a few guys called me OG, and I've been called Unk, and that's what I called all the older players when I first came into the league, and now I'm taking their title as the old guy. So it was a kind of an eye-opener that I'm not as young as I feel.
Dude, that is such a great story. That is so funny that, like, you're going around the locker room and nobody knows that show. And dude says, "Do you just like clowns?" That is incredible to me. Do you just like clowns? No, dude. No, Unk doesn't just like clowns. Amazing. We're talking to Brandon Bolden. So this is not, I'm laughing, and what I'm about to ask you about is anything but funny, but your journey has been amazing in the sense that it included a battle with skin cancer a couple of years back. Back in December, you announced that you were diagnosed with a form of skin cancer after the Super Bowl loss to the Eagles. What do you remember about receiving the news that you had cancer? Because that certainly is not something anybody is prepared for.
Yeah. It was after the Super Bowl, so it was kind of just enjoying the off-season with my family. Had a couple of biopsies and, not even thinking about what was going on. I think we just finished cooking breakfast and the kids were eating, and I got the call. And I remember sitting outside, and I didn't want to tell my wife. She was right there. Like, she followed me outside while I was on the phone. I remember getting off the phone, turning around, she was just right there. And, explaining to her what was going on and how I was going to handle it. And, there's never anything easy to tell someone, and I can only imagine that's not easy to hear from someone. So that was a kind of a, heart-wrenching moment. But I sat down and discussed it with my entire family. I told them that I wanted to fight this, as quietly as possible. I didn't want everybody knowing. And everybody respected my wishes. And, I wanted to prove to myself that I could beat this. And I didn't want to tell anyone until I was at a point where I felt like it was never coming back. And so here we are going on 4 years now, still cancer-free. And so extremely blessed and extremely fortunate to be a part of the Patriots organization because they were aware of it and, they kept quiet as I wished as well. My teammates who stuck by me and supported me through the whole thing, and my family was just the biggest rock you could ever have. They never let me feel bad about myself, and even after the surgery and everything else, they kind of just kept me very upbeat. And my kids just treated me as if I was dad. I'm 2 days out of surgery, and they're asking me to pick them up over my head and stuff like that. So, my kids make me feel as normal as possible. But, my family and my family and all the support and staff in this store is what got me through it and what's still getting me through it today.
Brandon, I think that response is amazing, and I'll tell you why. I think there's so many people listening right now that identify with that. I've said this a million times on the show, but since you and I have never spoken, I want to repeat this. Literally everybody listening right now is either dealing with something like this, or they have dealt with something like this, or they know somebody who has dealt with something like this, and I can fully appreciate what you just shared, because years and years and years ago, my father was diagnosed with leukemia, and then he sat down, my sister and I, and my mom, and said, we're not telling anybody. We're not going to tell anybody anything about this. We will deal with this privately. So I fully understand exactly what you're saying. And just because you handled it that way and my family handled it that way doesn't mean that everybody will. It's just all different. But I want to ask you this. You said the experience was a complete reset. Quote, I was able to redo it and reprocess how I was doing everything in my life. End of quote. I mean, the diagnosis can be so crushing and so devastating. How were you able to reframe that and then somehow turn that into a source of change the way you did?
The initial diagnosis, I mean, when it came, and I felt as if I was one of the more healthy people that I knew. And with the diagnosis coming and everything else, and, you know, the internet can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So I started doing my own research of what I can eat, what type of things I can put in my body. And as after surgery and as I started to go down that journey, I felt as if I needed to also change how I lived, how I went about playing football, and, you know, just trying to be a safer player in that aspect as well. And it's worked out for me. Like, going back and taking care of my body and everything else, I don't feel my age at all. It's been a hard mental reset as a physical reset for me. And I'm excited for what's next because I don't know what's coming next. It's just been a phenomenal journey so far, and can't wait to ride this out and see how it goes.
Such an amazing mindset. What a great approach.